Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz and his Democratic challenger, Congressman Beto O'Rourke, just finished their second and final debate tonight.
Both candidates spoke about a number of issues in Texas, including health care, taxes, and immigration. Now, here to talk about tonight's Texas Senate debate is Travis County GOP Chairman Matt Mackowiak and Ed Espinoza from Progress, Texas.
Thank you both for being here tonight.
Sure. Good to be here.
So Cruz is still leading in this race, according to a recent Mackowiak poll. Let's take a look at that. Cruz has 54% of support versus 45% for O'Rourke. Ed, after tonight, do you think Congressman O'Rourke has closed that gap?
Well, I do think he's closed that gap because another poll came out today that showed that this race is actually within 7 points. So if you look at the direction that it's trending in, it's heading in the direction of Beto O'Rourke. But as far as this debate goes, whether or not it changed people's minds, I think O'Rourke made a very good case tonight. He talked about health care. He talked about Texas being the largest state, the state with the most uninsured population, the state that leads in maternal mortality, and that nothing is being done about it. He said repeatedly that Ted Cruz is all talk and no action. He cannot deliver. I think that is going to resonate with people who are paying attention. That's an important closing argument to make in the closing weeks of the election. So I think we'll see things continue to go this way.
Matt Mackowiak, as far as the debate tonight, did anybody say anything that is going to change minds?
Yeah, I have to disagree with my friend Ed. The polls are actually going in the wrong direction for Beto. We've seen that over the last month. This race is getting away from him. That's pretty clear. This race was closer when it was about personalities, which is what drove most of the coverage over the summer. It's moved to a campaign now about issues, and Beto O'Rourke is on the wrong side of the issues as it relates to the state of Texas and where a majority of Texans are. Look, Beto came into this race down by a considerable margin, 5 points, 10 points, something in that range. He needed a major moment tonight. He needed to shake this race up, get new momentum, reach out to independent voters. He didn't have that. Senator Cruz really made him own his liberal positions. Beto wants to raise taxes. Beto's in favor of gun control. You go down the list of issues. Beto is running for U.S. Senate in a state like Texas without really understanding where a majority of Texans are on key issues. He has not moved to the middle in any meaningful way on any of these issues. He's running as a full-scale progressive, and that is not a path to winning a statewide election in Texas.
Ed, let's go back to the Mackowiak poll. O'Rourke is leading among women, but is down when it comes to male voters. What do you make of that gender gap?
I mean, that's not surprising. I think men in general tend to trend more Republican, and women can be more competitive for Democrats. But something to keep in mind here is that Beto O'Rourke has been reaching out to non-traditional voters. Non-traditional voters are not going to show up in traditional polling, and I'll give you an example of this. In 2010, I worked for Senator Harry Reid in Nevada on his re-election campaign. He trailed that entire campaign, but he reached out to non-traditional voters. In that instance, they were Latino voters, and that was the margin of victory for Harry Reid on election night. Beto O'Rourke has a very similar strategy right now, in that he is reaching out to Millennials and Generation X voters, which have the highest drop-off rate from a presidential to a midterm in Texas. If he can mobilize those voters, they can make the difference in this race, and they typically will not show up in a likely voter sample. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is Beto O'Rourke's sitting on millions of dollars right now and has that advantage over Ted Cruz, and that cannot be ruled out in the final weeks of the campaign.
What about that, Matt Mackowiak? These unlikely voters that Ed is talking about, will they turn out, especially in a midterm election?
Yeah, it's a big question. Look, the best predictor of voter behavior is past voter behavior. There are a lot of Democrats, there are a lot of people who have tried to change the electorate in Texas. Remember Battleground Texas 4 years ago? Registered hundreds of thousands of new voters, made no difference. The top of the ticket, they lost by 21%. Ed's correct. Beto has a huge cash advantage, and that's significant. He's also blowing through an enormous amount of money. I think he's spending 60 or 70 cents for every dollar that he brings in. His burn rate is extremely high. Back to what Rebecca was asking about the gender gap. O'Rourke was up 6 among women. Cruz was up 25 points among men. That is not a way for Beto O'Rourke to win a statewide election in Texas. There's a reason Democrats haven't done so since 1994, and we're not going to start this year.
Now, the president is set to come to Texas to rally for Cruz. Do you think the Trump factor will hurt O'Rourke, or will it matter?
I mean, I don't think it'll matter for O'Rourke's voters. I think it's amusing that Donald Trump said he would come to the biggest stadium in Texas, and the biggest one he could find holds a fraction of what the biggest stadium in Texas actually holds. But look, this is not any way to win over persuadable voters. This is not any way to win over O'Rourke voters. Trump is coming here because midterm elections are base elections. And what Trump is trying to do is appeal to the ultra-conservative, out-of-touch Republican voters who are left and try to make sure that they come out for Ted Cruz rather than stay home right now. Because up until this point, Ted Cruz is living up to the nickname that Donald Trump gave him, which is Lion Ted.
Okay. Matt, Ed, we got to wrap it up. Thank you both very much for coming by. We appreciate it.